Today we are diving into one of the biggest technological shifts of our time, and that's artificial intelligence. But not just the technology, but as a force reshaping business, capital cycles, and even how we think about work and knowledge. To help unpack that, I'm joined by someone who has spent his career building the architecture behind modern software systems. Toufic Boubez is a venture partner at Pender Ventures and a serial entrepreneur with more than 2 decades of experience in machine learning, cloud architecture, and enterprise software. Over the course of his career, he's co-founded several successful technology companies and held senior engineering roles at companies like IBM and Splunk. What makes Toufic particularly interesting for today's conversation is that he sits at the intersection of technology builder and investor, someone who has both designed these systems and thought deeply about their implications for markets and business.
This podcast is for information purposes only. It should not be viewed as investment advice or as an offer to buy or sell Pender's funds. Our funds are not guaranteed, and any discussion of past performance is not an indicator of future results. Any opinions expressed are as of the date of this podcast and are subject to change. Pender may not necessarily share the opinions of our podcast guests. More important information can be found on our website, penderfund.com/disclaimer.
Toufic, welcome to the podcast, and I look forward to our conversation today.
Thank you, Laura. That's really, really nice and generous of you. What an introduction. I should copy it and then use it myself. Thank you.
For sure. How about we start from the top? So before we talk about markets or business, it's sort of helpful to understand the technology itself. There's been quite a bit of debate about where AI starts and what these systems actually are and what they're capable of. So how about we go into a little bit of the actual terms?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that's a great starting point. Yeah. So the term AI gets thrown around a lot, and about a lot of everything. And I remember at some point, even, many, many years ago, when we were just dealing with machine learning, people were pressing me to say, well, stop saying machine learning, start using the term AI. I'm like, but we're not doing AI, right? So for me, AI is the broad academic, discipline or industry of creating machines that perform tasks that require a lot of intelligence. It's not human intelligence, it's artificial intelligence, but it requires intelligence, right? So it's a very, very broad category that has a lot of different things. Now, what we are dealing with today, when people use the term AI today, they're specifically dealing with large language models, whether it's ChatGPT or Claude or, Google Gemini and so on. And these are specific technologies, there are at the bottom, at the foundation of it, there are neural networks that are trained on a very, very large, vast amount of data to predict kind of the next word. There's just predictive engines. So that's kind of what they are. People forget sometimes that they are large language models. Now at scale, it almost doesn't matter because for 80% of the cases, predictive behavior is really required, and you can't really tell the difference between predictive behavior and like true deep intelligence. But that's kind of what we're dealing with right now. And then there's another term that gets bandied around a lot, which is AGI. Everybody talks about AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, and that's to me the destination. Eventually, where we want to get to is a threshold where the system, the AGI system, matches or exceeds human capabilities across all economic or tasks. Let's say across all economically valuable tasks, let's just say. So we're not there yet. I know that people say we're close, we're not close. It's very subjective. I don't think there's any kind of metric to say how close we are. But these are typically the 3 major things that are currency today. There's AI that gets used a lot. There's LLMs, large language model, and then people talk about AGI. So I hope that kind of helps kind of clarify some of the boundaries around on the technology and the terminology.
Yeah, no, that's really helpful. One thing you said that interested me, and I think is the center of a lot of the debate, is that that term of understanding versus prediction. And maybe you could explain why that matters and what these LLMs are doing when you submit your
Yeah.
query into ChatGPT.
Sure. That's fundamental. I'm glad you asked that. That's something I'm very interested in. So, thank you for asking that, indulging me. So, when I said like they're predictive models, really what they're trained on is statistically predicting what the next word is. They deal with tokens, but let's abstract the tokens out. Let's just think of words, right? Large language models are trained on language. And what they're trained on is they start with a word and predicting what statistically the next word should be, what the next word should be, what the next word should be, right? So that's kind of what they are. The way I like to describe it is they have a word view of the world, right? But what they don't have is what I call a world view. So there's a difference between a word view and a world view. A world view means they would understand things like physics, math, reasoning, causality, and things like that, which they don't have yet. I mean, I joke that you could bully a large language model to agree with you that 2 + 2 = 5 if you give it the right prompt and you're persistent enough, right? Because it doesn't have an actual understanding, a worldview understanding, right? But you know what? At scale, predictiveness mimics understanding at for a large number of use cases, right? Does it matter if a large language model can really produce a really written up legal brief for you, or it can take a document or whatever and summarize it for you? Does it matter if it understands it or not? It doesn't, right? So it becomes a little bit more fundamental, this kind of distinction between understanding and or not, if it makes sense.
Yeah. So when you were talking about the AGI, would that be a step closer to understanding?
I mean, AGI for me, would require some form of understanding, because the way I think of AGI is like a 3-stack model. Right now, we have the first stack of that model, which is the language model, right? So having a large language model, this is like, think of it as system one in terminology. System one, having a large language model. System two is a reasoning model. Being able, so and we're getting there. Like a lot of the new models have some reasoning built in. So reasoning, being able to think about some kind of logic, form of logic, and be able to take some facts and deduct new stuff from them. So that's kind of thing. The third part of AGM for me, the third layer of the stack, would be having this world model. Understanding physics, understanding relationship, understanding causality. So being able to imagine things before taking action. So when you put all those things together, for me, that really is AGI. And to me, that, people can argue, but to me, that is understanding, right?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Maybe going into another term that we've heard a lot about, agentic AI. What exactly does that mean, and how does it fit into the ecosystem?
Sure. Yeah. So agentic AI, I love that. I mean, it's funny. I know a lot of people say, and there's not non-judging or anything, but people say, oh, there's this agentic AI thing. But I remember when I was building Saffron in 2000, my first startup, actually, so 25 years ago, I had a book called Multi-Agent Systems by Ferber. And that's how far back the concept of agentic AI goes. And it was my Bible. We're building like a multi-agent system back 25 years ago, right? So right now, what we started with ChatGPT and so on a few years ago was generative AI, right? So generative is kind of straight one shot, write me an email that does this, blah, 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 write you an email, or take this document and summarize it, right? Or what have you, right? What agentic is moves from generative kind of one-shot arrow to a workflow. A workflow would be, I don't know, get me a refund for this flight because I missed it, right? So what does that mean? That means a whole workflow means being able to read, understand what you mean, what you want to do, figure out, I need to read an email. Go and read that email. I need to find the flight number. I need to find all the kind of stuff and do all that kind of action, right? So there is this cycle of agency. So agency means being able to be autonomous, being able to use tools, and having persistence, like a memory across multiple actions, right? So there's this loop that we talk about a lot in the field, in the agentic field, which is perceive, think, plan, act, observe, and then loop, right? So that workflow is what differentiates just straight generative AI from agentic AI, right? And I think David Ng had really, really good observation, and some of the research that he did. He's one of the pioneers. In that a small, relatively dumb model with, on top of it, an agentic workflow can vastly outperform a much, much bigger and smarter large language model. It's just a fact, right? So that's kind of the enhancer. Sorry, I hope I didn't go too long into that. Like, this is kind of a topic that I'm passionate about, but yeah.
Yeah, no, it kind of opens the next sort of box of questioning, like, given that these themes have been in the ecosystem for 20 plus years. We've been watching movies where there's been, I don't know, artificial assistance and sci-fi, and it's all sort of coming together now in a what is real and what's still a bit, I don't know, theoretical. So maybe we could look more at businesses that are actually operating today and how you're looking at the landscape of what a successful company that's utilizing AI looks like versus just, I don't know, layering it on top of their regular business model. And how should we sort of think about that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, so speaking of terms in common usage today, there's this native AI term. Companies that are, what is an AI native company, right? So there's a differentiation between like an AI wrapper and an AI native company. Now, if you look at some of the larger companies that have established product, legacy product, and so on, what they're trying to do is, slap, as you say, and I don't mean it in a bad way necessarily, but just put some kind of bolt on some kind of agentic large language model interface to it. I don't know, maybe a chatbot or like a button that says summarize this document, or some kind of agentic or AI-ish layer on top of it. So that is a small feature that maybe augments a much larger legacy product. And the way I think about it is, if for some reason their LLM goes down, right? Or somehow they lose connection to it, it's not really going to affect the core product at all, right? So that's kind of the difference. Whereas an AI native company is the whole product is built around this kind of AI, the large language model, and agent workflow. It is the core of the product. If the AI goes away or they lose connection to their LLM, whatever, the product doesn't work, right? So that's, to me, is the kind of the main differentiator. A lot of the larger companies, the more legacy companies, are just trying to add these AI features to their product. Now, so that's currently what's happening. There is something that I'm starting to see, and it's something that I'm experimenting with myself, a kind of a third layer, if you want. It's not really well known yet. It's not mainstream yet. But it's like a truly AI native company, which is where even the employees, quote unquote, a large number of the tasks that are performed in a typical organization are actually performed by AI agents, right? So not only is the product an AI product, but actually the task, the performance, the different roles inside the company, a lot of them are delegated to AI agents. So that's kind of starting to emerge right now.
Yeah,
really, it's exciting.
It is really interesting. And like when we talk to our portfolio companies, we're seeing similar themes about utilizing it internally, utilizing AI and LLMs internally, but then trying to incorporate it outside and in their actual products. But I guess coming back to what we talked about earlier, the predictive nature and maybe the hallucination, there is still some hesitancy from customers to use to see their, I guess, providers using AI too aggressively. So
Yes, for
it's
sure.
this interesting back and forth. But in the markets, I mean, we've seen this huge software sell-off where people are assuming that software is dead or that a lot of these companies will cease to exist, even when I guess their business models historically have been so defensible. Given your background, how do you sort of view the intersection now of the software industry and AI becoming more and more prominent?
Yeah. So I think just like in every major technology wave, uh, the new technology will create companies that are very disruptive, right? And then the legacy companies will either adapt really well and survive and embrace it, or they will go away. I mean, that just happens in every major technology cycle, right? And we're seeing like one of the biggest in my career, one of the biggest technology shifts in my career that I've seen, right? So definitely there will be winners and unfortunately losers, right? So I see companies like Microsoft, for example, who has adapted and embraced like to the hill, like really, really embraced AI, right? And they're really trying to adapt and survive for this next generation of technology cycle, right? Some other companies, legacy companies, I'm not necessarily want to name them, but are not adapting as well, and they're trying to fight the fight, using the old moats, which don't work anymore, unfortunately. So yeah, it's going to be a really, really interesting shift, a huge economic shift, just like any disruption, any major disruption in the past, whatever, 20, 40 years, right?
Yeah. I guess also given your experience on the venture side, are you seeing similar read throughs just for the smaller companies or startups? Is it quicker to have an idea and go to
Oh,
market or have
oh
less
yeah,
back
yeah, yeah.
end?
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure, for sure. So what used to take, a team of 7 engineers and like funding and so on now can be done with a much, much smaller team, a lot faster too. Now, this is good and bad from a
Yeah.
venture capital perspective, because the barrier to entry has gone down so much. A lot more people are jumping in, and that's not necessarily a good thing, because you get a lot of, I don't know how to use a polite word, but a lot of stuff that's not as good, So
Yeah.
then there's a lot of confusion in the market, and then as a venture, as a VC, you need to look at these things and evaluate them, and evaluate, are they valuable? Like, how easy is it to recreate? If you did it in a weekend, vibe coding in a weekend, why can't 100 other people do it, right? What is the real value? What is the intrinsic defensible value that you can take a company and grow it in? And when the market is crowded like this, because the barrier to entry has gone down a lot, it becomes a lot harder for a VC to actually figure out what is durable and what is not durable, right? So that's kind of the conundrum, right? The double-edged sword on that.
Yeah.
And actually, I see that myself. And I've sat in, as you know, on a lot of the calls with the venture team, kind of trying to sort through, is this real? How easy is it? How defensible is it? How reproducible is it? Can somebody else do it in a weekend again? That kind of stuff. And that's really, really confusing sometimes.
Yeah. No, it's something that I'm quite passionate about as well, of just kind of distinguishing what is that factor that makes something innately human. And I know like we publish a Substack, and just the idea of writing as an individual, and you own your content and it's your own thoughts and opinions, but then also seeing the amount of, I guess it's called AI slop out there.
Yes.
People can just mass generate written work, and maybe it's not to that same degree as what the human writer took a week to make. It'll take some LLM 5 minutes maximum.
Yeah.
And so it's opened this Pandora's box of what is the human factor that actually makes something quality versus just another
100%.
option.
That is an incredibly good and valid analogy, right? And And that happens in writing, that happens in graphic design, happen a lot of creative domains where the AIs are starting to get better and better. To this, I still, there's still, people can still, to a certain extent, figure out this was AI slop, as you say. They're calling it
Yeah.
because they can tell. Versus this is like, this is or this is real human written or human design, right? But that boundary is getting blurred. You're right. Um,
Yeah.
but in the startup world, in the kind of company VC world, the modes have changed, and what is durable versus uh, not durable is a little bit different, right? So it used to be, and this is just again my opinions, but it used to be that the moats, there are different categories of moats for legacy companies, right? um, there was IP. If you had a really, really good idea and you patent it and nobody else can do it, and then you build a company around it, that's great. uh, Another moat would be you're solving a complex problem and it takes a long time. Like it took you 3 years to build the product. It's a really complex product. And yes, other people can do it, but it's going to take them 3 years to do it, right? So that's another one. And another area is just if you're entrenched in your customers, right? And entrenched means you are really deeply embedded in their data, or you have people who have been using this product, cultural people have been using your product for 20 years, right? And they're not going to change. They're not going to go to another product because, I mean, then their usability goes away, their usefulness in the company goes away, right? So a lot of these modes are changing now. Um, you know, Migration is becoming easier. For example, the cost of migrating data is becoming cheap because you can ask an LLM to like you write a script to migrate your data or whatever, But I think the new modes are going to be, or they are already, proprietary data. If you can collect and have a corpus of data that is proprietary to you, in that it's hard for others to get it, that's going to be a huge mode for you. If you are really embedded, if you're solving a complex workflow that makes you embedded inside a particular company, that's going to be like a really big mode. So these are the entrenchment, integration are kind of the new modes in my opinion.
Yeah. And within those steps, I guess, where do you see human intervention being most critical as AI becomes more prominent?
So we are not yet, I mean, it depends on the task, right? In some tasks, the AI the AI is getting better and better, like code writing or summarizing documents or generating documents, generating emails, that kind of stuff. They're really, really good, to the point where human validation and verification is becoming less and less important. I mean, it's still important because don't forget, no matter how good they are, LLMs will hallucinate, right?
Yeah.
Now, if they hallucinate on, I don't know, not to minimize it, but if they hallucinate something in your email, it's one thing. If they hallucinate something where you're in your control system or your factory, it's something completely different, right? So it's the criticality of the task that you're delegating to the AIs, right? So human intervention is really, really important still. And that's just in the output, right? But if we step back and one step higher, we still need somebody. So humans are moving. I'm going to take code writing, just software development, just because it's to pick an example, and it's something I'm very familiar and comfortable with, right? Developers have moved from execution to orchestration, right? To managing and editing, right? Editor going, if in your writer analogy, they've moved from being the writer to the editor, right? So now instead of writing code themselves, good developers are just managing their agents, their AI agents, telling them what to do, giving them specifications, reviewing what they're doing, making sure that the architecture is correct and so on. But all that stuff is still the AI can't do that well, right? So that's where human intervention is critical. Now, human intervention also really critical for things like validation, or governance. We still don't have security models and governance models on these AI agents. They're running around using MCPs, using tools, and so on. But there's really very little governance and security and oversight over them. So in terms of oversight, that's where a lot of the human intervention is really important. I want to add, sorry, I know, long-winded about this, but this is another important topic. In the VC domain, right? A great example where humans are really, really important still. There's this concept of perception or instinct or gut feel that is just not replaceable, has not been replaceable yet. And I don't know when it will become replaceable, but we're not there yet. I mean, as a VC, you can sit down. If you have the experience and the gut feel, you can listen to a founder give their pitch, right? And all the data is there, and AI will look through the data and say, yeah, checks, yeah, this is good. But you're listening thing, this just doesn't add up, in my mind. I don't know why, or my gut feel tells me half of this is BS, right? And this is where the human part has not been replaced yet. And I don't know when or if it will get replaced eventually by the AI. So there's a lot of areas still where humans are really, really important in the loop.
Yeah, I find that part really interesting because even going back to the pandemic, the number of investors that actually wouldn't make an investment in a new holding or a new company because they'd never met the management team face to face, even if they were talking over Zoom, it was that same feeling of, I'm not willing to invest capital with this person until I know that I've looked them in the eyes and I feel comfortable. So that's 100%. Even one step removed. And this is AI would be a totally different level.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I believe that. Yeah. I'm the same way. I need to talk to you to get that vibe. The limbic system that we've developed over millions of years of evolution, is there for a reason.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I guess that sort of leads into the next theme that we've been hearing so much about is that this idea that the labor market's going to completely collapse and that there was kind of a few think pieces out there about how a substantial percentage of white collar jobs will become obsolete within the next 2 to 5 years. And there's a lot of doom out there about the role of human in industry. And do you have a view on that?
Yeah, I've read some of that too. I think some of it is true, right? What I've noticed, for example, what I call is the hollowing of the junior class, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So that's real, right? I feel terrible. I feel really bad for young people coming out of university or like people who have been in the job market for a couple of years, because more and more AI skills are becoming sufficient enough to replace the junior clerk or the junior software developer or the junior analyst or the junior legal assistant or what have you, right? So these junior roles are getting hollowed out, unfortunately, where now you have, a set of like much more senior roles who are managing maybe a much smaller number of juniors and a number of AI agents, right? That is a fact. And that's how it's interesting. I was trying to draw kind of at some point, I was talking to somebody and drawing like the organization, and it's occurred to me that, traditionally organizations were like this pyramid,
Yeah.
Now they're becoming, I don't know what to call it, like the diamond, where you've got the beginning of a pyramid and then hollows out at the kind of senior developer or whatever senior roles, and then hollows out because now you have a lot less juniors, and then you have a lot of AI agents, right? So that's kind of what I'm seeing for sure. And there's a couple of things. Let's put a pin in that for a second, because I just want to talk a little bit about kind of the bad aspect of this, other than the disruption in the labor market and kind of the economic reality for some of these junior people. As a society, we are, what's going to happen? We have relied traditionally on this evolution of junior to mid to
Yeah,
senior, and all those senior roles are there because they've paid their dues, right? And we
exactly.
rely on them. So what's going to happen when we're not training our juniors anymore to get to that level? I mean, I kind of worry about that. I've spent a lot of time in all my startups in my career, kind of developing the juniors into becoming seniors so that I can rely on them 2, 3, 4 years down the line. And it's been great working model, right? So now we're doing that, and it kind of worries me a little bit, right?
Yeah.
So that's one aspect. Now, to get back to some of these white collar, I mean, yes, if you think about large language models, what are they good at? Their language, because they're language models, and they have a large corpus of training because they're a large language model, right? So they've been trained on everything else. So any kind of profession or job that requires you to be good at language and good at precedent and good at knowing a lot of information, the legal profession, sometimes maybe some of the medical profession, things like that. Those, I mean, the lower levels of those are going to start getting replaced by these language models because that's what they do really, really well, right?
Yeah.
It still doesn't remove the more senior roles where gut and perception and deep experience comes in, but that's happening. There's
Yeah.
no avoiding it.
Yeah. I've thought about this a lot too. I mean, probably our world of like investment banking and asset management is probably one of the most critical those junior years, and that you're not, so I'd heard the phrase of your first 2 years you're not actually contributing a lot, you're just learning how to think. And
Right.
the
That's right.
combination now of on the one hand there being less roles, but on the other hand the incentive to think has also, it seems, gone down when you don't actually have to spend hours learning about a company. You can query very quickly into one of these LLMs and they give you the answer. And the point was never knowing the answer. The point was learning how to get there. And I feel like there's this disconnect, especially on the junior level, that I'm not sure where we go from
1,000%.
here.
Yeah, 1,000%. Look, I mean, I am the deepest techie. I mean, I'm the techie of techies. Like I have everything. I have like a home lab server. I have servers all over the house. Like and my kids have access to laptops since like they were 5. And they got their phone. That I am not a Luddite by any stretch of the imagination, but I have very strict rules to them that they're not allowed to use ChatGPT to do their math homework, as an example.
Yeah.
And they're not allowed to use it to create essays, to write. They have to do presentations. They're not allowed. Not because I'm a Luddite and I don't believe in technology. It's because I see the effect. You're absolutely right what you're saying. Like this kind of human brain, and sorry, part of my PhD was in neuroscience, so I'll drop in some things like that around that. But the human brain learns through struggle, right? When
Yeah.
you struggle to get an answer is when you develop and you learn. When the answer comes really, really easily because you can just ask ChatGPT, that learning, that struggle that allows your neurons to develop and to create connections is not there anymore. And there's research that's coming up, like in the last year or so, that actually proves that is happening to not just to the kids today. No, it's not just
Yeah.
kids today. It's everybody who is deeply dependent on using like AI and large language models in their job, who just go there without like thinking about it. It's kind of affecting your cognitive abilities, right? So that's, you're bringing a hugely important point. You're right.
Yeah. No, it seems like there's, I don't know. It's hard to actually quantify like how you teach this, and you don't want to say going into schools you can't use this tool, because it seems like it is going to be such a major part of the, I don't know, work in just your career. But that step of learning to understand and learning to learn is, it seems like the most at risk and is the most important. And based on what you were saying before, that being that decision maker and that editor, the only way you can get to that point would be from the learning process.
Right?
And that,
Exactly. You absolutely, you hit it right on the head, right? Exactly right. These people, these senior people who are managing these AI agents got there because they paid their dues. and they'll learn,
Yeah.
right, the hard way, and we're kind of taking that away from the juniors. And yeah, I worry about that.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I,
And
yeah,
maybe it
no,
all
it's,
becomes moot 5 years from now. Maybe the AI will become so good that you don't need those people. I don't know. Who knows, right?
yeah. No, there's a lot of unknowns for sure about what
Yeah,
it looks like, but yeah, I think we're all trying to figure it out every day, and new information every day, new fear.
yeah,
But
yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it's
I've heard the
crazy.
other side of it too. Of each person has, depending on how you choose to use the tool, you can become infinitely more productive in a positive way. It just depends if you're using it to replace intelligence or to supplement it.
Excellent point. You're absolutely on point there. So it's how you use the tool, just like any tool, right? Uh, if you use it to replace, as you say, that's perfectly put. If you use it to replace intelligence and learning, yeah, you're not, like any muscle will atrophy if you don't use it. Your cognitive
Yeah.
ability is the same. But if you use it, I like to think of it as, I use the tool as a sparring partner sometimes. Say, hey, I have this idea, tell me why. Well, no, I don't think so, because and then I use the tool also to execute stuff that I could do and I know how to do. It just takes me a long time to do, and I don't need to spend that time. It's just a lot faster to get it to do it, right? I mean, and we've been using tools like that in development for a long time, like not just even before AI. I mean, IDEs, the integrated development environments like VS Code or whatever, a lot of times, will auto-generate like getters and write, like it will generate a lot of the stubs for you when you develop writing code, because yeah, you know how to do it, but it's going to take you an hour to generate them. You can just have them auto generate all the stubs for you, as an example, right? So
Yeah.
that's not a new thing if you use the tool correctly.
Yeah. And if you were looking more on sort of what we're doing here on the asset management side, like how do you think advantages could be generated using AI versus to I guess improve intelligence rather than replace it?
Yeah, I mean, uh, one thing that on the investment side, I mean, uh, these tools, the AI tools, are really, really good, say, at analyzing numbers and graphs and financial data and all that stuff, and to a certain extent doing some market research, right? So yes, you could do it, but you can also give it to the tool to just do the financial analysis, do a lot of the kind of mundane task that typically will takes time. Um, you you can start using that, leveraging that. Um, you can do market research, right? You can actually do a deep uh, a deep research project to research a particular competitive analysis on a particular company and so on. So there's a lot of ways you can use that tool in your investment world to just make you a lot more productive, a lot more efficient with your time.
Yeah, but it seems like we kind of touched on earlier, that ultimate decision making process is going to come down to the portfolio managers and the experts that have had experience in the field for however number of years to be able to actually determine what
Absolutely,
is a
I
good
still
company
believe.
versus yeah.
Yeah, I still believe that, and I mean, I see it in my everyday life. Yes, we're generating code through AI, through coding agents all the time. I mean, every day I write code, and a lot of the people that I know write code that way. But at the end of the day, there's still this kind of oversight at first at the decision layer. What is it that I want? How do I want it structured, and so on? But also at the evaluation layer.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I guess if we were looking at just the economy in general and I don't know, investable universe of companies, what do you think would have to happen with AI to permanently increase value at a certain firm rather than this just being another, I guess they've used the term hype cycle or bubble where there's just a lot of narrative? Like, what would you have to see this be a permanent positive improvement in the economy?
You mean in the let me just understand the question a little bit better. From an investment perspective, what do you want to see in a company, or in general from the general economy perspective?
Either way, whatever one you think makes more sense.
Yeah, I mean they both make sense.
Yeah. I was thinking, I think maybe more generally, if we're looking back to say, like, what did AI truly change, and what was the positive, like at what point did this turn into a positive narrative?
Yeah, I think AI is already creating a huge shift in the economy, in the way business is being conducted, in the way companies are being created. So I think there's no doubt when we look back, we will see that improvements in efficiency, improvement in productivity, improvements actually in results, in the speed of results, in the actual results themselves. I mean, already AI is being used for research, whether it's new drugs, or in kind of medical research, in engineering research. It has created a huge improvement in efficiency in our economy. There's no question about that. I even today, even not necessarily looking back 5-10 years from now, even today, if you look back at like a year ago or 2 years ago, between there and now, you can see like an improvement and shift in the economy. There's no question in my mind. Now, from a perspective of what do I want to see in a company, is kind of similar things. Are you using AI effectively? Are you using it to improve your efficiency? Are you using it to create new models? Are you using it to, what is it that you're doing with AI that is better than what you were doing that you could do without AI, right?
Yeah.
So could be a lot of different things, but these are kind of the metrics that I look at. I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah,
but,
no, it does. I guess just back to the general economic benefit, just to maybe replace AI as your sparring partner now, but what would you have to see to invalidate that bull case as this is actually a negative, and overall we've seen economic degradation rather than benefit?
If I may, I want to come at it a little bit differently. I think what would invalidate the bull case in my idea, in my mind, are a couple of things that we need to be careful about, right? One of them is the scaling fallacy, right? The diminishing returns. I don't think that training feeding a model that's 10 times bigger is going to get us 10 times better results. Like building a trillion parameter LLM is a waste of time, in my opinion, because I'm not really sure that it's going to give us that kind of much better results. I think starting to add what I call system 2, which is reasoning, and then a worldview, is where the investment should start going. But right now, the investment is going in building bigger and bigger and bigger models, right? That's the scaling fallacy. To me, that's a wall that we will hit if we're not careful. So that would invalidate it. The second thing that would invalidate it, in my mind, is unit economics. It's something I experienced personally when building. It used to be that SaaS software was great margin business because you spend money, you build a product, and you spend money acquiring the first couple of customers, and you spend money running whatever in the cloud, your product for these customers. But then the third, fourth, fifth, 10th, 100th customers, the margins are great because you're not spending that much more. A lot of the costs are already there that you already spent, right? The margins are great. In AI, the unit economics are very, very different. Every time one of your customers uses your AI, whether your agent, it generates a whole bunch of LLM calls, whatever, complicate, and that costs money. So every time they use your product, it costs a lot of money. So we're seeing the margins are shrinking. And if you're not very careful as a company on unit economics, I mean, it's going to destroy you as a company. I mean, even the big guys, like you look at OpenAI or Anthropic, things like that, they're struggling with unit economics. Right now, they're being floated by the billions, the hundreds of billions of dollars that's being invested in them, right? The unit economics
Yeah.
are not there yet for them, let alone for the small fry, right? So that's kind of the big thing. Will we get to a point where the unit economics makes sense? That's, to me, that if we don't, that like the whole house of cards will fall down, right?
Yeah.
The third, these are, no, one more, if I may.
Yeah.
Like the energy wall. We're building data centers left and right. We're sinking hundreds of billions of dollars building data centers. At some point, where's all that energy coming from? I mean, will we have, how will we keep up with the energy consumption of all these data centers? Like, first of all, are we overbuilding? I feel we probably are overbuilding on the data centers, but then are we thinking? And there are people that are much smarter than me that are dealing with the logistics. I'm sure they thought about. I hope they've thought about it. But in my mind, I worry like, how are we keeping up? Do we know all the energy costs? Where is that coming from? All these hundreds of billions of dollars worth of data centers that we're building, and to me, that's kind of like it's going to be a choke point if we don't really think about it. So these three things. I don't think of anything else. I think there's probably more, but these are the three top of mind for me. These are the cases that would invalidate this whole bull market on AI.
Yeah. No, it makes a lot of sense. Even when we see all
There's a
of
fourth
these.
one, actually,
Oh,
side note,
yes.
if I may,
Yes.
I don't know if we can talk about it too much, but I don't mind saying it, which is all this circularity in money not
Yeah.
changing hands, like, where is that going to end? You have one company investing $100 billion in another company that turns around and buys $100 billion worth of equipment from that company that then uses that money to invest. But no money changes hands, right? So all that's happening is these deals happening with hundreds of billions of dollars, increasing the valuation of these companies with no money changing hands. And eventually, like, that has to end somewhere. It's like, it's not turtles all the way down. Like, it's got to end somewhere. So to me, that kind of financial engineering that's happening is kind of worrisome.
Yeah. No,
You can cut that out of the of the podcast if you want.
Yeah, it's really interesting just to, as you've seen these big companies report, just seeing those types of transactions, seeing just the CapEx numbers in companies that traditionally were so asset light and that was their value proposition. Now it's a different business model, it's different metrics, and they're trading at multiples we've never seen before based on a technology that is truly very early phase and we don't know the ultimate endpoint. So there's
And we
a
don't
lot
understand
of dynamics.
of that.
Yeah.
We don't understand the unit economics of that technology. Like, yeah, you're right.
Yeah. All right. Well, we just have one last question for you.
Okay.
The most fun question of the whole show.
Uh-oh.
If there is a book that you would recommend that's influenced how you think, we like to ask that to all of our guests.
How I think about AI specifically, or about
Either it could be AI specifically, or just one that you found very helpful throughout your career, one that you think our listeners would benefit from reading about.
So I'm going to date myself here. Early on in my grad school, my thesis director gave me this book called Mirror Worlds. And Mirror Worlds kind of opened my eyes to a lot of kind of the world of simulation, the world of like a really, really, really good book. It's an old book. I'm sorry. Yeah. But since you said something that's influenced my career, and typically things that influence your career influence you early on. And so for me, kind of, I started thinking about a lot of that stuff after I read Mirror Worlds in the 90s. That's how long ago that was. Yeah. Another book that influenced my thinking on AI and agency is the book that I mentioned, which is called Multi-Agent Systems by Ferber. It's a lot more academic, and very, very theoretical and academic, but it's really, really good book if you want to understand kind of the concepts of agency. And
Yeah.
there's a lot more. I'm a reader, so I have my library here has like hundreds of books. So I love to read, but you kind of put me on the spot for two books, and I have to say, it's probably those two books that early on in my career influenced me. There's a lot newer books that are really, really good that I would encourage people to read all the time. But yeah, since you asked me to name one, I kind of cheated and named two.
Yeah. No, we love readers. All of us here at Pender are big readers. So I appreciate the extra recommendation. Well, Toufic, this has been really interesting. Thank you so much for joining us today. I know that I definitely learned a lot.
Thank you for reminding me. I enjoyed this a lot. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. And for our listeners, we'll be back in the studio soon with a few more conversations in the months ahead. We'll be sitting down with different thought leaders to explore the few different themes and opportunities that we're watching closely. In the meantime, you can follow our ongoing commentary on Substack, where we talk about AI quite a bit. It's called the Pender Pulse. And that's where we'll share what we're seeing in markets and what we're debating internally, as well as what we're learning in real time. So thank you all for listening, and stay tuned.
Pender is an independent, employee-owned investment firm located in Vancouver, British Columbia. Our goal is to protect and grow wealth for our investors over time. To achieve this, we seek to understand the quality of a business or security, obtain more value than we are paying for, deploy capital in flexible mandates, and mitigate downside risk. We have a talented investment team of expert analysts, security selectors, and independent thinkers. They manage a suite of niche investment funds with active, concentrated portfolios of value-based, occasionally contrarian investments. We invest in our funds too. You can learn more at penderfund.com.